I've sold over $7 million in sales in under 4 years, and in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how I did it. So we'll be going over the exact process I used, the big mental shifts I had to make, and really why 99% of salespeople get stuck at just being a glorified order taker. I'll also take you through how I help clients get to the point where they're able to close over 50, 60, 70, 80, and even 90% of the people that they talk to. If you don't know who I am, my name is Christian Polk. So I've been in the online sales space for a little over 4 years, and I've sold anything from B2B, B2C. I've sold for some of the biggest names in the industry you've probably heard of, like Jeremy Miner, Alec Heck, Ravi with Scaling with Systems, Ryan Pineda, bunch of others, but who really cares about me? Okay. So who this video is for is somebody who is in sales, who is looking to get to the point where they're actually elite and they can close anybody. If you're somebody who's happy closing 20 to 30% of the people that you're talking to and feel like there's nothing else you can learn in sales, then this video isn't for you, okay? This is for somebody who knows that there's a way to close anybody. And it really just comes to tapping into that and making sure you can connect with your prospects and get to that level. So what this is not going to be is like one of those other sales gurus, which there are a ton, that's gonna focus on one aspect of the sales process, like objection handling, right? Or tell you something gimmickly like, oh, scriptless selling is the new way to go. Those processes, again, if you want to get to 20 to 30% close rate, those are going to be perfect for you. But if you want a process that actually works, go ahead, stay tuned, and we'll get through it, okay? And this is the exact same process, again, that I've used, but I've also taught to hundreds of clients at this point. Like, for example, I got Georgie here, who lives in Bulgaria, crushing over there, made $32K last month, bought himself a new car. You know, Ethan got the 56% close rate. We have Jacob, who he is a business owner. He sells more B2B services. He got $11K a month. We have Jonathan here, who's been in sales for over 10 years, sells something B2B as well, was able to over double what he was making. We have Jared, who sells B2C, more of a biz op offer. He was closing at 38%. He got to over 62%. We got Jacob, who was able to, or James, my bad, James. He was able to get over 8,000 per week in comms. We got Owen here, who again sells something B2C, sells a biz op, went from 4,200 to over 10,000 just 1 month. And we got Andrew here closing a little bit over 90% of the people he's talking to. So first and foremost, let's dive into the mental shift you have to make in order to actually get the results that I'm talking about here. The big shift for me was understanding what actually holds people back from getting anything that they want. It's not really like their actions or really whatever it is. It really just comes down to one thing. It's their identity. Because if their identity was aligned to the person who they needed to be, the actions, their beliefs, everything else would be aligned and they would be where they need to be. Okay. So how I came to this conclusion is pretty interesting. So like I said, got in the sales space a little over 4 years ago. As soon as COVID hit, I said, fuck it. I lived in Kansas at the time. I had just graduated college. I was in the service industry before that. I was a waiter while I worked 2 waiting jobs to pay through college. And I did not want to stay in Kansas because I am deathly scared of being average, and I never wanted to be the person who died basically like 2 miles away from where they grew up. Okay, so that was the biggest thing for me. So as soon as I could, I hopped into sales because I could do it remote. It seemed like a good opportunity to make some money. And then as soon as I do that, I shipped off to Miami. Okay. So when I was getting fresh into sales, I was pretty up and down, but I ended up investing a bunch of money into some mentors, like over 30,000. And I got to the point after about a year and a half or so, I was pretty consistent making around 15 to 20K per month. Okay. I was closing around 20 to 30% of the people that I talked to, sometimes a little higher, like, 40%, but I was pretty consistent at that range. But I knew for me, I got into sales for freedom, and being on calls all day and not being able to break through to the next level was impeding on that. Because if you live in Miami, or if you've been there for a weekend, you know it is not cheap. So 15,000, 20,000 per month doesn't really go as far as you think it would. As soon as you hit it, you realize that I don't think no matter where you live, but especially if you're living in Miami. And the thing was, I knew I could get to the extra level in sales. Like I knew there was another level. Like I've seen it in some people, and I knew I could be making more money. But really, all I got told was, well, you're doing pretty good, man. Just take more calls. Because like I was always like the number 2 guy, and the number 1 guy was taking 16 calls a day, 7 days a week, right? So he was making like 60K, but he was taking more than double the calls that I was willing to take, right? Like I had a girl at the time. We don't got to talk about that. But it's like I wanted a life outside of sales. And I knew I wasn't going to be able to reach that if I just kept doing what I was doing. And also, life has a funny way of making it to where even if I wanted to be that person who was taking 16 calls a day, I literally couldn't. So the biggest thing I was running into is I was having really bad neck problems. So if you know anything about the neck, it's connected to a bunch of different things, mainly the vagus nerve and the blood that goes to your head. So through a motorcycle accident, tons of sports injuries, what I had ran into is my vagus nerve was about, I think they said it was like the 5th the size of what it should be. And when I was actually sitting, no blood would rush to my head. Like I was getting no blood in my head. So if I was on a call for an hour, by the end of it, I couldn't think straight. Like I would get lightheaded. So between each of my calls, I had to lay down for at least 10 minutes, at least, to get some blood back in my head so I can then prop back up and hop on my next call. And if you were reviewing my calls at this time, which I later found out like there was people who were reviewing my calls, you realize I never moved my neck. So this was the thing I was running into. And the procedures that I needed to get were not cheap at all. Like at this point, luckily, because I was able to make more money, I put over $30,000, I put a lot of money into my neck. I haven't sat down and calculated it out, but like on top of the living expenses that I was having, and for those type of procedures, insurance doesn't cut it at all. They don't really dive into it because you need a specialist, because most of the people that you go to, even if you got insurance, they just don't know what's going on, especially when it comes to things like the neck. That's very complicated. So I knew I needed something different. So really what kept driving me to get to the next level was, 1, because I was always wanting more, but 2, some of it was out of necessity. So really what helped me make this shift into understanding how to tap into pretty much everyone. So I wasn't that person who's closing 30, maybe 40%, but how can I actually close 90%? I wanted to learn from somebody who was closing over 90%. So that's exactly what I did, okay? So this is somebody who you might know him, very, very thick accent, like one of the best people I know. I was able to actually get one-on-ones and truly dissect his brain, which is very hard to understand. And I think you can really only be at a certain level of sales to really even understand like half of what he says, okay? And that's what I was able to do, because he was somebody who closed over 90% of the sales he was making, and he was able to, as a high-ticket closer, just selling coaching, make over $1 million a year. Now, you do hear some people who say like, oh, I hit 100,000 per month, but what they don't tell you is that was only for 1 month, and that offer is probably not around anymore because they were selling a scam. I've seen a couple different people actually get indicted because they ended up, they're selling a scam and then they're held liable and things like that. And I knew these people weren't very good at sales, but they hopped on, a flash in the pan offer, made 100K per month, but it wasn't consistent. I wanted to learn from somebody who was actually consistent, because I didn't want to be that person who had to hop from offer and offer and offer and just had no stability in my life, right? I wanted freedom, but I also wanted stability. I didn't want to, not know where rent was coming in case like I had a month where I wasn't on an offer. So I learned from him, and he was able, and the biggest things that I was able to really learn from him was how to actually tap into people's identity. That was the big shift. And from that point, I've gone all in on just really, truly understanding people's identity. And a lot of the studying after that really came was not from salespeople, because I've never seen an actual salesperson, like a trainer, dive into this, because he wasn't like a trainer. He was just somebody who'd done really well. And if, you got his attention, you could get some one-on-one time with him. So I've never had anybody else actually teach this. So I would have to dive into like psychology textbooks like from Stanford, or like really, really study like, FBI negotiators, CIA people, and really be able to formulate and break down how to tap into somebody's identity and bring it into the actual sales process so you can start, so I could close more while talking to less people. And it took a little bit of trial and error, but once I actually cracked the code, went from 30, 40 to 50, 60, 70+% some months. And that's what allowed me to have the freedom where instead of, being stuck around 15 to 20, I was able to get to 30, 40, even the highest month around 60,000 per month while not having to work more hours. Okay. And which allowed me to actually get my neck for the most part fixed. I'll probably have to get some more stuff done. But as you can see, I can sit here and talk and I can actually have blood rushing to my head. Okay, so that was the big shift for me. So if you're like me and you're obsessed with really, truly understanding like human beings and you want to close as many people as you want, this is what we're going to go over. And we're going to go over the process to actually do that. Because that's really what it comes down to. Because the only thing that holds people back is their identity. So you need to have a process that dives into people's identity. And one of the big thing as well, I would say, is you don't need to be somebody who had been in sales for a couple of years to do this. Okay. For example, I have Lauren here who just freshly got into sales, and he was able to get to the point where, like, I think just within a month, because of what he was doing, he was having people ask him to review his sales calls. Right. Or we got like a new offer. We got Sergio here who was just able to come in and start crushing it. We got Georgie here who was able to go, perfect. And then, we got Michael here who was fresh into high ticket sales, just quit his W-2 job, was able to get to 10K, pretty quickly. So it just comes down to, if you truly understand the process, that's how you're going to be able to close deals. So let's dive into the process. Now, this is typically going to be for people who you're either booking your own calls or you're having them booked for you. Like I said, more coaching, consulting, service-based industries. That's really what the process is going to be focused on. Okay. First things first, we need to open the call. So when we open the call, we'll go over this process and just understand, I'm not going to teach you the word for word scripting here, because it's not the word for word script that you need. You need to understand the process at a deep level and have genuine conversations with people. Because the biggest thing, especially when you're starting the call, is if you sound like a salesperson, or if you sound like anything they've heard before, they put you in the bucket of salesperson. Understand, we're all running automated scripts in our mind. That's how we shortcut life, right? If you had to consciously think about everything you were doing all the time, you literally wouldn't be able to function. So our brain is really great at just creating shortcuts. So if you sound like somebody else that they've heard before, like, they're just going to automatically put you in that bucket. So when we open up the call, we need to understand like why they're there. We don't need to understand what the weather is like or where they're calling out of, because why? That's what other people are going to ask. And if we fall into that bucket, then we're just going to have an uphill battle. Okay. Once we understand, okay, why they're there, why they booked the call, then we need to understand like what they're actually looking for. Like, what are they looking for help with? The biggest thing is we can't accept bullshit, because what will happen is, just understand, anybody that you're talking to, they're wearing a mask. Okay. You're not talking to the real person. You're talking to the representative. And a lot of type A personality people, they have a thick mask and they're not going to want to tell you the real thing. So they'll tell you, oh, like, I'm just always looking to get better. Right. Which you and I both know, or you should know, that that's not a real answer. So if we accept it, then they're basically going to stay surface level and they're going to lie to you the entire call. So first things first, we need to know what they're actually looking for help for, but we can't accept bullshit. And this is why I hate the question of, what's the biggest challenges you're looking to get help with, right? Like, you're only going to get good answers from somebody who is very open about the problem. You're not going to get good answers from somebody who wants to master problems, which, if you're dealing with type like prospects who are more type A, you're going to run into that a lot. So we need to make sure we can get this actual problem out of them of what they're looking for and why they're actually looking for help with that. That's going to get a problem and or a goal. Okay. So that's going to be the biggest thing that we need. And if we're actually direct, okay, we can get problems out of people. So like Owen here, excuse my French, but just bitch slap TF out of some cocky kid. Got some goodness there that I'll bleep out. And it resulted in a sale. Moral of the story, kids, stop buying into frames and accepting half-ass answer. Big shout out for Christian for correcting this mistake, right? So again, get real answers out of people. You're actually going to get some sales. Okay. Then from there, we can add in a frame. So when I mean a frame, I don't mean an agenda. I do not like agendas. I very rarely use them. Agendas, 99% of the time, are for the salesperson. They're not for the prospect. If you don't know what an agenda is, it's you basically telling them how the call is going to go. Like, hey, I'm going to ask you a few questions, and at the end, we'll see if it's a good fit. Bullshit. What this does is it makes them painfully aware that they're in a sales conversation. It breaks up the conversationality of the sales convo, and it just puts them into, I'm a salesperson and I'm here to sell you. Okay. Really, it's for the salesperson. It's to give them the illusion of some type of control and try to tell the prospect how the sales call is going to go. But the prospect really dictates how their sales call is going to go. You just have to be good at really getting them to the right spot. When I say frame, it's about putting an identity on them. Depending on what you sell, depending on the type of person, that's what the frame is going to be. So it's hard to give you just a concrete, this is the exact frame you use, because it's going to be very, very much dependent on exactly what you sell. Okay. But a very easy one, like let's say you're selling a biz op, going from, I love working with people who are going from, order taker to action taker, becoming a business owner, something like that, right? You can put a frame on them, get them to start buying into the identity of going from a order taker to an action taker, right? Becoming a business owner. Because that's the identity by the end of the call I need them to adopt. From there, then we dive into situation. Okay, you need to know what they're doing now to currently solve their problem, or what they're doing now in the realm of their problem. You need to know how long they're doing it and why they're doing it. Okay, the reason why I like to ask why they're doing it is oftentimes they don't have a good answer, and they're telling themselves they don't have a good answer of why they're doing a certain thing. For example, if you're selling a marketing, solution and they're doing referrals, well, what caused you to do it that way? Oh, it's just the way we've always done it. Right? They're telling themselves they have no good reason of why they're only stuck to referrals, right? So we can really start to create more doubt in their mind, right? Side note. Then from there, we dive into the problem. Now, when we're talking about the problem, the biggest thing is we need to know what is missing or why their current situation isn't enough. And they need to admit that they are the problem. Because if they blame the external, you can't change the world. You can't change the external. You can only change their current situation. So if they blame the external, there's no way you can help them. Again, going back to the leads example, if they say, let's say you help real estate agents and you're selling them leads, which is somebody that I help with right now. If they're blaming the market, like, bro, you can't change the market. All you can do is change the amount of leads that they're getting. So we need to make sure anytime they blame the external, we make sure we bring it internal and get them to admit that they're the problem. Again, somebody who's looking to lose weight, well, they don't have time to do the diet plan and lose weight. Let's say that's what they say is missing, or that's why their current situation is what it is. You can't give them more time. So we need to, again, take away the external, get them to make it internal. And then once we get them to admit that they have the problem, we need to probe and make it hurt. Okay. Understand why people change. People change due to pain or the fear of future pain. So if you truly believe in what you're selling, you have a moral obligation to make people feel the pain. Because if you don't, then they will stay in their current situation that they're in. And if they stay in the current situation that they're in, they're going to keep on reliving the pain over and over, day and day and day. Okay? So you need to help create enough pain and tension inside their body that they need to move. Because the thing is, people do not typically sit and think about their problems. People think by talking. So you getting them to really understand their pain, and like they thought like they only had this much pain, but you like widen the gap in their mind. They're not only telling you that, but they're telling themselves that, which just allows you to create more urgency. And if you create more urgency, right, you're going to get more PIFs, objectionless, right? Like Ethan here, okay? So it's like able to really get to that next level is making sure we're widening the gap. Also eliminating alternatives, okay? So getting alternatives out of the way, them figuring out on their own, they're going with a cheaper option, any of that dumb shit. And then we need to get commitment on them actually doing something, okay? So that's going to be more of the problem section. Then from there, we need to understand buying decisions. When I say buying decisions is, what do they need, and why haven't they got it yet? Okay. So there's two big key aspects of this that really allows you to have a lot of objectionless closes. It's eliminating limiting beliefs and diving into their identity. So when we eliminate limiting beliefs, we need to understand what's actually holding them back. Okay. So if they are looking to change, understand, guess what? If they're looking to change, they haven't changed yet. And for a lot of people, they've been looking to change for a long time, or if they're even looking to change for a little bit of time, they still haven't changed yet. So we have to understand like why they haven't changed. Or if they tried something else and it didn't get results, why didn't they get results when other people got results? What's been holding them back? Typically, you're going to be able to get beliefs out of people, whether they, don't think they can make the time, they're too comfortable in their current situation, they get shiny object syndrome, whatever it is. We're able to pull out these beliefs, really understand them, and help them eliminate them and dig down that those beliefs don't help them. From there, then we can tie those beliefs to their current identity. Okay, of like where they're actually at now. So if you did a good job in problem, they think they're here, we push them down, and then we build that gap of like where they need to be, and then we tie their identity down here. And then the person who they need to be is all the way up here. And we want this contrast of who they need to be versus who they are now. And this has to hurt. It really has to hurt. Like for a lot of people, you need to make them cry. Okay. I can't tell you how many people I've made cry during this, but it needs to hurt. And the reason it needs to hurt because it needs to create that urgency inside of them. Okay. And the identity level is one of the highest levels you can to actually have leverage in a sales conversation. Because if somebody truly views themselves here, but you're showing them they're down here and they're stuck here, like there's so much inner tension that they have to give you their money. Basically, right? But the thing is, they need to understand that. They need to feel that pain because it's the best thing for them. And if you're really able to dial this in, you'll be like my man Emmanuel here, where he got 2 6K deals, really digging into limiting beliefs, and was able to get 12K cash collected in just a day. And then we have Jared here, who was able to get some objectionless closes. And it really comes down to his setter told him like, hey, they're going to give you this objection, what makes you different. But if you know how to sell, right? They're not going to have a conversation like they're about to have. So he didn't even ask, and he paid in full with no objections. Also as well, Jared even gets compliments on how he's selling people. So people will even thank you for really getting them to see the identity of who they need to be and helping them get there. That's what it comes down to. Then from there, we need to understand, again, what's going to help them get to their goal. Again, like how do we get there? By understanding more their ideal criteria. Just like we had Wagner here, who dug a little bit more into that, was able to get like a 32K sale. And then after that, we go into future pace. Future pace, we need to know where they're going, why they're going there. Okay. So what does them getting to their goal actually do for them? I need tangible, I need emotional. Get both of them out of them. Then from there, what we need to do and what is going to be the most leverage as far as helping them paint that picture is getting to a moment in time. What do you mean by that, Christian? Okay. So what I mean by a moment in time, just understand human beings. When you really sit and you think about it, like all the stuff we put ourselves through, like all the hard work, all that stuff, it's really for a moment in time that can help encapsulate like what we're searching for, what we're doing. Like I said with Georgie, like he got 32K in 1 month and then he bought himself a car because he really wanted to buy himself a car. The happiest Georgie felt when it comes to that car, I'm sure he still loves it now, right? He bought it like a couple weeks ago. I'm sure he still loves it now, right? But the happiest he's ever going to feel is when he first bought it, got the keys, and when he's driving it off the lot. Like, dude, it just feels great. Like, that's the moment in time that makes it all worth it. Like, I know for me, for example, like I wanted a sports car, got a Jaguar, and the best moment was when I was first driving it. Okay. Like when you first get the car. I still do like it, don't get me wrong, but we have a good ability of just normalizing whatever it is around us. So if we're able to really paint a picture and we're able to get to a moment in time, make it really real in the prospect's mind and understand like what that moment in time is for them that they're doing this all for, help them paint that picture, really get them to see it in their mind of what it actually is. Then we create this North Star, like really what they're running towards on such a like visual level that they're going to do whatever it takes to get there. Okay. So just like with Blake here, he was able to really create that bright future and getting an objectionless PIF. Okay. I think he sells fitness. Then from there, we need to go into consequence, and that perfect image that they want so much, we need to rip it away because we need to bring them back to reality. So we have, what it is we have that emotional high, and then we strip it from them. And what this does is it creates so much urgency inside of them that they need to make a change. Okay. So, and the biggest thing is, if we understand the principles of it, you don't have to say it perfect, just like Jared here, right? Imperfect action beats perfect inaction. Pre-handled things pretty shaky, but still get in the closes. And then, we have Peter here who closed 3 out of 5 on the bad leads, quote unquote. Okay. So just understanding the actual discovery process on a deep level. And then again, just really creating a big gap in their mind. So once we get to the consequence, we rip it away, we get the commitment to change, and then we get into the presentation, tie everything they said they wanted, we get commitment, and then we need to handle any concerns if there are some. If you're doing well, you should be getting a lot of objectionless closes, but sometimes people have concerns. That's okay. But what you do not do is you do not start to logic trap people, okay? Like again, if you're too aggressive, then you're going to only sell those people who are going to be people who you can push into something. Like, I don't know about you guys, but I know for me personally, if somebody starts to push me, I got some, I don't know, maybe Neanderthal DNA. Like, there's no way you're going to get me across the line. So if I hop on a sales call with you and you try to do that stuff, like, dude, you're not closing me. And you're only going to, like I said, you're going to be closing those people who are pretty much the 20 to 30% of the people that, are going to be a little bit easier to push around and close. Okay. You need to really be able to speak to this person on a deep level, tie in to their identity of who they need to be. And that's how you actually handle their concerns. Like with Jared here, again, like I said, if you're really good at this, you get to the point where you get a lot of objections closes. So hopefully you don't forget how to handle concerns. Okay. But he was able to actually overcome objections. He was talking about being able to cancel. So we just confronted it on, we're not going into logic mode on, oh yeah, you can cancel blah, 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 blah. Like, no, there is a limiting belief. There's an identity shift this person needs to make. Because if they're asking you, hey, can I cancel this? They don't have the right mentality to actually get any type of results, no matter what program that they're going to join. So we need to be able to actually shift that for them. Okay. We got Ty here, who was able to go from 2 out of 3, overcoming these objections, close at 66%. We got Tony here, finally overcome people who are fearful about the money, get them across the line. He is in fitness, so he's able to get them across the line. Again, we got Jared here. Got some other people just talking about the objection handling frameworks, all those different things, just so you can understand it more. Okay. So when we talk about the process, because this is the one, again, I use to get to a point where I can close pretty much anyone that I'm having a good conversation with. Okay. And this is what, again, help my students get to the point where they're closing 50, 60, 70, and even, upwards of 90%. But why most people are stuck at the point they're at when they're in sales is due to a couple things. So just understand, any prospect that you talk to, they're basically a lock. Okay. There is some type of combination that can get this unlocked. Just most people don't have that combination. Okay. So there's really 3 levels. So level number 1, you're a beginner. Okay. So you're fresh into sales, you're following a script, you're a bit robotic, you fall into people's frames, you're not really able to truly connect with people, you have a hard time leading, you can come across as salesy, like you're closing like 10, 20%. Like what you are is you're a hammer. Okay. So it's like we have this lock, and some locks are so fragile, you use your hammer and it's going to break a few. Okay. But just understand that's what you are. You're a hammer. Okay. So really it's just about the next level is basically you're a glorified order taker. So you are a key. So for some prospects, this is going to work. But for others, it's not. That's why I'm saying you're going to be stuck around like that 20, 30, maybe 40% close, where just like that 60, 70% of people, your key does not work on their lock. Okay. Like you're either like you're following a script or you're following a process, like you can pivot, you're not as robotic, but you fall into people's frames, especially what I see a lot is A-type personalities or people who are not in reality, right? Like people who are a little bit high in the sky. I don't know what type of personality you'd call that, right? But you have a hard time bringing people to reality. You only are able to connect with a certain type of prospect. Like you're really good at closing a certain type of prospect, but it's not them, then you're having a hard time. You can only lead certain type of prospects. You have a hard time reading people and really truly understanding like what type of lock am I even trying to sell to? Okay. Tend to have a hard time doing that. Again, you're either too passive, too aggressive in the objection handling, try to put people in boxes, and that's only going to work with a certain amount of people. Again, Mr. or Mrs., I close 20%, 30% of my sales calls, and I know all there is to know about sales. Don't need to learn anymore. You can come across, less salesy, but you still fall into the sales box. You can be inconsistent, a lot of sales slumps. I see with that, not growing. You got to work long hours just to hit your quota. Okay, that tends to be the glorified order taker. It's not until you make the shift of having a dialed in process that forwards and backwards. Okay. Again, you shouldn't be reading from a script. You should be truly connecting with people, really being able to read people, dial in to their identity, that you're able to get to the point where it's like you're closing, 20, 40K each and every month consistently, closing 45 to 75% of your sales calls and getting to the next level. If you're at this stage, you're pretty much a lockpick. Okay. Doesn't matter the lock. You have the tools that's able to actually unlock whatever it is that is going to be their buying combination. Okay. So you follow a process, but it adapts to each individual. You're actually able to connect with all types of prospects. You have a strong frame. You're an actual leader on your sales calls, no matter who you're talking to. You can read people. You have a deep understanding of human psychology. You're not either too passive or too aggressive. You can actually speak to the person, truly understanding their concerns and help them overcome it by talking to their identity. Closing 45 to 75+% of your sales calls, you come across as actually a genuine human being. Guess that. Like you can actually be genuine in your sales calls. You're consistent, you grow in sales and in life, and you actually lead yourself. That way you can lead other people. You work a schedule that you actually want, so you don't have to be on 16 calls a day, and you can leverage your skill set. You can leverage your skill set to run sales team and even start to get off of calls. This is what George is doing now of actually like running the sales team and getting an override. So he's going to be making a lot more money very soon. And in Bulgaria, I don't know if you know this, but that goes a lot further. Okay. So for example, like I said, like with Georgie here, getting 3 piss before lunch, closing 75%, not giving up on people is going to be a big one. And just truly, truly caring about the people that you're talking to, right? Like Jared here, feeling like Yoda, like being able to get people to buy into his frames, get people to change from like, they're wanting to figure it out on their own to, I can't figure it out on my own. I don't want to do that. I need to take action. And then we have Raf here. He's closing, just right off the bat, 66% of the sales calls and just taking it to the next stage. Okay. So this is really how you get to the point where you really can close anyone. Oftentimes it's going to be from actually having hands-on help. Okay. Especially when you're talking about sales, it just comes down to truly understanding people, but also understanding yourself and where your weaknesses are. Because one of the big tools that I use to always teach people is I do like full breakdowns of their sales calls. Because oftentimes people come to me and they're like, hey, my problem is here. I want to work on this. But after we have a conversation and after I review one of their sales calls, it turns out like, yes, they might have that problem, but the thing that's going to push them forward the most is going to be something wildly different. Like with Jonathan here, like I said, he'd been in sales for over 10 years and he was able to go, he's like making like 8,000 per month to over 18,000 per month in just a couple months. And a lot of it was from reviewing his calls, seeing exactly what he needed to change so we can accelerate that in a very short period of time. Okay. Also with Sam here, talking about like getting the feedback and how he needs to implement it and like the more structure, going deeper in pain points, flushing out objections. So it isn't something that takes super long to get great results. Now, it does take a while to truly master the skills, but in order to get a bump in what you need to do, like if you have somebody who can point it out to you and get you the right things right away, it doesn't take that long. For example, when Georgie first, started working with me, in the first couple days, he was able to get 80% of the actual sales that he did all of the last month, just in 4 days. Okay. Also, we got Michael here who had just jumped into it, only went through week 1 of the training that I do, and was able to start closing some freaking deals. He just had jumped into the high ticket space. Okay. Then we have Calvin here who was able to, he's done a ton of different sales programs, and really it's just coming down to, what he said as far as my process. It's really dialed in, and that's what he liked about it. It just comes down to, you don't need to know a bunch of different things. You just need to know the right things and how to dial in that process. Okay. So if this is you, that you really want to get to this next level, I highly, highly recommend you go ahead, you book a call down below on see if I'm going to be able to help you. So we'll do on that call, I want to understand a little bit more about what your current situation is and see if I can even help in the first place. Because when we're talking about my mastermind, okay, so this is something that I recently launched, and I'm keeping it very small for a reason. Because the big thing I see, especially in the space, is every single program is just overstuffed, either with too many people, or they have somebody teaching that they don't have the level of skill to really get people to the level where they need to be. Okay. So I'm going to keep my mastermind very small, 20, 30 people max. So it just comes down to, I'm only going to get people into the program that I truly feel like I'll knock it out of the park for them, and that they'll benefit the most from what I'm doing, and that they have the right mentality to actually use what I'm laying out. Because you can give somebody the perfect diet plan in the world, but if they don't have the right mentality to use it, okay, they're not going to get good results. So what's included, just so you can have an understanding of what's actually included in my mastermind. So we have 3 group coaching calls each and every week. So we go over scripting, role playing, objections every week. We do call reviews every week so we can listen to calls. Again, small group. These calls go as long as we need them to be, making sure everyone's questions is answered, everyone's calls get reviewed, everyone gets to role play, get their objections heard. Okay. You get a full video call breakdown each and every month. So just understand, if you're doing an hour call, I'm taking 2 hours actually breaking down every single bit of nuance in your call so you can get better as quick as possible. You also have a one-on-one with me each and every month where we can do a deep dive role play, get you whatever you need. But you also have access to me on Slack to answer any questions you have throughout the entire process, because time kills all deals. Okay. So if you had something happen today, you hit me up on Slack, you get an answer today, you can go close that deal. You don't have to be waiting for one-on-ones. You also get the, masterclass where I go over exactly how to get over 30,000 per month. I go over the exact process, what you need to know, how to get there as quick as possible. Bonuses, you have my exact framework as far as handling objections, rebuttals. You see my exact sales call breakdown, recording of my one-on-one sales coaching calls, and also recordings of my sales calls. Okay. So you can see me in live action, actually closing deals. So you can see real life sales calls. It's not just ethereal. It's very, very much action-based. So it just comes down to you. Okay. If you feel like this is something that can help you push it to the next level, you got 2 options. Number 1, you can stay where you are and just be that guy who is closing 20, 30%. I'm not clowning you because I've been there before. Or you can actually bet on yourself, book in a call with me, see if it makes sense, and see if you can't take it to the next level. All right. If you have any questions, go ahead. You can definitely message me on Instagram. But if not, hopefully I see you guys on the call. If not, go ahead and subscribe, and then I'll see you guys next time.